So hello everybody, welcome to Talk of Horticulture. Today we're back out on site and myself and Michael were wandering through a very old orchard.
Yeah, this is a change this week to something slightly different. What we came across on our travels was an old, it's quite a sizable, what would you say, it's about half an acre of an orchard?
Say about half an acre of the orchard. Was probably, how many is there? Would there be 100 trees on it? Not near enough, maybe 70, 80
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah, the guts of it, yeah. We'll do a specific count on that and come back to you.
So what's interesting, what's sparked our interest in this orchard is the fact of its age. And they were planted, we looked them up there earlier on, they were planted back in the 1930s. So they're coming up on about 90 years old. And they're starting to show their age, aren't they?
Yeah, so there's a few little small things we suppose as any tree of that age group would have. We'll put up a picture of them so you can see them, but to give you an idea, if you held your hand out and had your fingers pointing up, that's what they're very like. So the cup of the palm of your hand and your fingers pointing up would be all of the.
So each tree has about
multi-stem
4 or 5 multi-stems, all going out at diagonally from the base. So there's no central stem. So they're a traditionally pruned apple tree from nearly 100 years ago, I suppose. They're up and 90 years old. But some of the treatment of it over the past few years hasn't been the most sympathetic with its pruning cuts. And we're looking at the different decay from the pruning cuts. Look at this one here, like.
So there was a stub left on this one here, and you can see where it's compartmentalized around it, and the stub then is decayed into the center of it, and that's right into where all the stems branch out from. So the decay has probably traveled in there. It's not having any adverse effects on it. See, another piece, one of the stems has died off here, so it's further up on it. But the reason that these were all they were spread out and the center was kind of removed was to allow kind of light to travel down in, to allow the fruit to ripen and mature. And you can see, as many orchards like this, you see you're rubbing at it there, is the moss
Covered in moss and lichen, like it is. It's quite it's quite scary looking almost. You can't help but stop and take a picture of it. It's very striking. But from a distance they look grand, but it's only when you get up closer and we're looking at the decay, the dieback, it's in the end of its life almost.
Yeah, so it's probably time to start making arrangements in case one or two would fall or anything, that they can be replaced with more with some of the original species. So take footings off them now and have these growing on as replacement trees for the future to keep the orchard going, I suppose.
So we've been looking at the history of this orchard, and we said it was planted back in the 1930s, and they're all Bramley apples that are apple trees that are growing from here, and they were growing from seedlings, but like that. So we should be looking at probably taking a few cuttings off the newer growth that's growing from the stems and try and have a bit of fresher stuff growing when the mother stock goes, I suppose.
Yeah, that's what I'd be doing there now, and that so that if one falls, I can replace it with a younger tree. I think, were you mentioning to me as well that when you were doing your little bit of research on the history, that they put crabapple trees into it as well?
Yeah, so we're right beside one of the crabapple trees. So what they said was, back in the 1930s when they planted these trees, they didn't get a great yield of apples because of lack of pollinators. Very interesting, them worried about pollinators back then. Like, it just shows that how important getting pollinators into the land to pollinate all your plants is something that's not just a new thing, and this is going back generations. But they got a horticulturist in and they put in 2 or 3 crabapple trees that would have been native to try and draw in the pollinators into the apple trees. But like, when you look up, there's plenty of apples on it now, isn't there?
Plenty of apples on it, but one thing we can notice, and when we put up the picture you'll see it, is that the crown of all these trees is now at the same height all the way across. So for the budding apple picker, like myself here now, going to make an apple tart out of, I'm too short to reach anything. Everything is up at the top, and that's I see. I'm just looking up at some of them here. They're very small because it's very thick at the top, and so most of them either haven't matured in this one particular one I'm looking at here, or they actually haven't really formed at all. And
Well, I think it was last year. There was a bumper crop of apples.
yeah,
And it kind of does go in 2-year cycles, that you have a great year one year and then it's not as great the next year. But like with the crown being so high, you can't pick them, I suppose.
no, that is the problem. So as a production orchard, well,
It's well past it.
yeah, we'd need to drop the height of the crown now, and that's fairly possible because we've a lot of new shoots coming along here on the lower stems, which could be, we could get up into the crown of these, thin out. There's an awful lot of dead wood here in this particular one, and crossing branches, and we could thin all that out now and remove some of that and allow a bit of light back into where it originally was here, and where this multi-stem begins, and create some fresh branches here lower down.
So that's the maintenance practice that we took in here about 3 or 4 years ago, is we took a lot of the heavier kind of crown up, and we've allowed light to get in onto the lower stem to epicormic growth. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I suppose it would be, but I suppose it would be, and from what's growing now at the minute, just looking at them there, it would be easy to create a framework of branches, I suppose,
From those new shoots. So these are basically little whips coming out of the main stem, much lower down from where the canopy is. But it's going to be a long time before they are bearing apples, I suppose. Michael's just banging on the tree and you can hear it's hollow.
Yeah, so there's another stem here that's beginning to die off, and the bark is stripped on it, and you can see where it is starting to die off a bit. But
So if you're looking at these, and if we were able to go back in time and tell the lads who were pruning them all those years ago, their pruning cuts are quite flush against the bark. Like they didn't give much of leaving a collar on where the branch came off, where they cut off.
no, there's a few dodgy cuts on it there, here and there, and that's probably attributed a little bit to the decay. Not overly well healed over. It hasn't really calloused on a lot of them totally, as we would see in some other species of trees.
Like I'm
Find a bit
just
of clay there in it.
yeah, there's clay and all sorts of worm casts
Yeah.
inside the tree, which shows that it's absolutely completely dead on the inside. Like it's very like,
Well, it's the center of it is decayed. The branch is not actually dead.
no.
Yeah, as you can see at the top, because it's living on the outside. It's growing. This piece of bark here is still carrying, still keeping it alive all the way up along. So it can be hollow in the center.
But it is amazing. Apple trees are
stay
prone to
alive.
this, though, aren't they?
I always
to being
found them
hollow.
very prone to decay. Like I know I have some very old apple trees at home, and the center of them is actually full of concrete.
Oh God.
So years ago, what they would have done was, where a hollow formed or where decay formed, they would have chipped out the soft timber and then refilled that with concrete, and then the tree grew around the concrete. Now, obviously, if you're going to saw it,
Great for the
it's going to be a
chainsaw, yeah.
problem. But the thinking behind that was that the concrete filled up the cavity, and was supposed that the tree would be able to heal over the solid part of the decay. Instead, you see this cavity here, it's hollow in the middle, this wound. So someone had sawed a branch off, and as you can see, the wood lice in it there.
It's almost like if a child drew a picture of a tree and they drew a little hole in the back of it for an owl to go and live. That's exactly what it's like. So it's left a hole in the tree.
Yeah, so it's where someone has sawed a branch off and the middle of it's gone. And what the thinking about the concrete was that when you put the concrete into it, the callus wood grew across the concrete, and it gave it a foundation to carry it across, which it did. And I know in my own trees it really worked quite well.
And would it
way.
not burn the inside of the tree? Like the lime, like it's not.
Part of where they were putting it onto was they were putting it onto timber that was already dead. So,
But that's a practice that isn't done anymore.
no, it's not done anymore.
Because
It's
you
not.
hear people painting wounds and filling holes like
Wound
that. Like,
painting is a funny thing. It's came around and went and all of that, and came back again. And you still see people going out with a tin of Dulux. They cut a tree in their garden to get a tin of Dulux
Yeah.
and whack it over the wound, But if you cut it right, you shouldn't need to.
But like that, it's these wounds, they can't be fixed overnight. Like these are going to be, this is chronic failure.
Well, they're part of the feature
Look,
of it,
look
though,
at this
aren't
one
they?
here. Look what's growing out of the wound here.
There's a little
It's elderberry.
Sambucus nigra.
Yeah.
and that's
And it's-
growing out of the wound, which is. But that's part of the feature of it as well. Is that if they were perfect, they wouldn't be a time capsule of what they are. So all of these little features bring it back to the history of the tree. There's a little, and for their biodiversity as well. Like look in there. There's a snail now. He's made his house in here.
See that,
in
yeah.
this cavity. So this is what they're all about as well. You know.
So as a source of food, source of habitat, like we're looking at the different species growing up, we're looking at the mosses, the lichens, like this is the natural progression of what these will be doing naturally in the wild, wouldn't it? Like they are.
It is, but it's also how this side of this orchard was originally a production for
They-
for people
For making cider.
Yeah, so it goes to show how man, is still providing a habitat. Man colonized this area and planted it, and it's still providing a habitat to so many different things here, and it still could be you could still get quite a good crop off it if you really wanted it.
I know that whoever doesn't come in and pick the apples, there's a guy out the road who has horses, comes in and feeds them to the horses. So
They love them, yeah. Cattle love them too,
eating them up, like. So we're looking over this next tree that has a lot of the kind of newer shoots coming off it. And me and Michael were discussing about how we're going to go about getting some baby plants, I suppose, from the oak trees, from the apple trees. Sorry, but
Any apples off an oak tree, thank you very much.
no, that'll be. Don't eat anything off that tree. If you eat an apple off an oak tree, you need to go
Bring
back
it to
to
me,
yeah,
'cause I'd like to see that.
yeah.
Well, it's probably you. Nobody else is going to do that. Only you.
So these are lovely. They're about a metre long, fresh stems out of the main stem. And what I'm planning on doing is cutting them. And I'm going to cut I'll try and get maybe 100 or 200 of them. And I'm going to do them in a variety of different ways. I might try and graft a few onto a rootstock.
Yeah, you could. I wonder. Usually, when something is grafted, looking at these, you would see lines around the body. I don't see grafting points on them. as
So
such.
this is when we went to college. We would have grafted apple trees onto a rootstock, which would have been a kind of vigorous rootstock to allow the apple tree to grow a bit quicker. Usually like a crab apple or something that's going to grow with a bit more vigor than your kind of traditional ornamental apples or eaten apples. But there's no shoots coming from any of these trees. So this
No.
would lead you to believe that they're 100% roots and branches
Yeah.
are what you see is what you get.
Yeah, and this is quite a good one here now, because if you look up into the crown of it, we could tin off a bit of some of that heavier timber up there to lighten, because there's quite an extension on that going out that way. We could tin off that a little bit, and you've loads of nice shoots here coming up along the stem to make, a little lower framework is what I'd like to do with it anyway.
So you'd say get up there, take a bit more of
Just a
the
little
weight
bit out
off.
the top, like you see up there where they're crossing and rubbing, there's a lot of dead wood there as well.
So-
Thin that out, and look, you have some lovely shoots coming on here. Like, that's a nice one there that'd make a
Nice
nice
cutting.
framework
Yeah.
for branch where you could pick from, and you're going to get fruit on that then. And
But are you saying that you should be doing this at a much younger age? If someone had an apple tree that's only 20 years old in their garden, get rid of the crossing branches, anything dead, diseased,
Damaged.
and damaged. Get a good framework into it.
Well,
That's so important in a younger apple
if
tree.
you look at you can see actually where somebody cut that one there. You see where they cut all the shoots,
Yeah.
they cut it back to a stub, and then they shot from that again, and then they moved that out.
Yes,
And
yeah.
they cut it back to a stub further out again, and that. But if you have like a damaged branch, and then you put it, it gets to where you have a large crop of fruit, it's not going to hold it up. So you need a good structural framework to hold out. You're not going to.
Like if we go into the middle of the woodland here, there's an apple tree that's really kind of on its last legs. It's lost probably 90% of its bark around the base and double stem, and it's still there's still a few leaves.
Still life in it up there, but yeah, it's on its last. It's actually completely hollow in the centre. It's actually full of apples which have fallen into it over time. You can see right in this side and totally out the other side, so it's totally hollow there. So that's probably one that you'd be looking at replacing.
That'll
in
be
the short term.
that'll be turned into a lamp or a bowl on the lathe. I tell you that much.
Well, you're not going to have a lot of turning. It's very hollow.
But
You
you
might
hear
up there,
if you hear now, that's the knocking from it, and it's actually covered in woodwork. So you talk about the biodiversity merit of that. the amount of little bugs and insects that are actually eaten into this is absolutely amazing. We also do have a bit of fungal growth growing around in a few of the trees. There's a few bracts and a few little mushrooms growing at the base of the trees. We saw one in particular up here. There's this kind of a...
Yeah, that's ink cap that's up here. It's growing at the... And it's colonising around the base and the roots of the tree. So
that would suggest what?
this is probably a little bit of root decay there. Not in a situation like this, not really to worry about, because like the tree is perfectly healthy at the minute.
So these are kind of little cluster forming mushrooms. They're, what colour are they?
I'll
like
put a nice picture of them.
We'll get a picture on the Facebook page about them, but they're like a kind of a honey yellowy colour at the base of the stem. But that suggests that there is some fungal growth at the base of it. I do know that something that we are going to look at is to feed these apple trees, is to get some sort of nutrients in around the base of it. So we have kept the grass at bay and the weeds from the base of these to allow the grass not competing with the tree itself. But I think it would really merit maybe some mulch or some compost sprinkled around the bed. Even farmer manure might be something just to allow a bit more nutrients, because
a bit of biochar or something like that might help them.
Like if you think of the energy that this needed for 90 years to produce apples, like you're talking tons and tons and tons and tons of apples over the course of its lifetime being taken out of this ground. Like, it's amazing they're still producing that.
Yeah, they're still up high. If you had a little scissor lift here now, it'd actually be ideal. You could go up in straight up in between it. You'd actually you'd pick a good crop of fruit off them. But the problem is that you'd need something like that to get up at them. You're not going to even climb, very difficult to climb them without your...
Like you see sometimes over in the continent where they go and pick apple trees and orange trees, where they have a tractor and they literally come and they shake it.
Oh, deadly, yeah.
I don't think
them do that on street trees in, is it Spain or somewhere? They had lemons or something. Or
yeah.
Something like that. And they were driving along the street and shaking them all off it. Very cool.
It's amazing. Like, I don't think these would withstand the shaking though. They're very very brittle.
No, they are. There's too much deadwood on them there too.
Because here's down here now, someone has planted 3 smaller ones.
Yeah, so I don't have to get a closer look and see. Yeah, they've put in an infill of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
But they're really engulfed in the canopy of dwarfed by the more mature ones, and they're not going to really do anything here. I don't think. They're just competing with the...
Yeah, and they've produced no fruit at all. Like, that's what age would that tree be?
15, is it 10, 15 years old?
Definitely, and they've produced no fruit.
It's a shame, like, because this is the question: is if we're going to, if we want to prolong this, we're not going to be able to plant an apple orchard in the same situ. Really, we're going to have to let this almost...
You'll have to phase it in and out. So you'll have to manage it, or someone will have to manage it to bring in new ones. As we pointed out with that one that's down the bottom then there, say, take them out as they die off over time.
It's not really happening enough though in trees about people planting for the next generation. Like, this was lovingly cared for the last nearly 100 years.
But it wasn't even, but it was, when it was done, it was planted for
a purpose.
Farming, its production, and that's, I suppose now not too many people are going to be interested in production. It's just the longevity of it, I suppose.
Because if you go down to like the Bulmers orchards where they make for the cider and stuff like that, it's a totally different planting pattern. It would all be in linear lines, and they would only be getting a certain amount of years out of the trees, and they'd probably be taking them out and replacing them, I'd imagine.
This particular one was hand picked, hands done, and I'm not sure whether Bulmers ones or that type of commercial would be machine done now. I'm sure it is. But
getting thirsty thinking of Bulmers now.
Well, don't think you're going to pick up too much cider of this one here. There's another dead one there. Well, 50% dead, 50% alive. And the final one next to the fence in there is gone at the bottom.
So that looks like, if you go up closer to every
graft there,
you can very clearly.
There's a graft.
So you can see where they were grafted years ago.
2 grafts there now.
It's almost like if someone put a belt around the bottom of the stem, and it's a bit of a bulge
Two
coming out.
grafts there.
So that suggests that it is on some sort of grafted
These ones
stock.
are anyway. The other ones.
It's not as prominent, but these are actually a much. You can it's very prevalent to see how much higher up the branches were pruned on as well.
Yeah, these are slightly different ones. In fact,
I can't see any apples. Oh, there is a few apples on it.
they're puffers as well. They're not.
It is an awful shame to see these trees in this state. So we're going to do a little video now during the week about planting up some of the kind of suckers off these trees and how we're going to grow new stock from these trees.
This one here now is one that I would be removing that half that's hanging over that path there.
It's dangerous.
Yeah,
It's very dangerous.
now, and that I definitely would be taking out of there now.
That's on the goal list for sure.
Yeah, I definitely just. And you don't need to take away the rest. The rest is fine.
It's
For the moment.
It's interesting to see though how this one has decayed much more, and the ones around it are in much better nick. Like,
Yeah,
again, hollow.
it's the cave thing to that, you know. But that whole section has died off now, so.
That's another day's work anyway. That's another day's work. So we're going to put up a few pictures, and we might do a video of doing a few cuttings, and we'll put them up in the social media channels. So thanks a million for listening, everybody.
Yeah, sure. That's this might be the last one in our series, I think.
I think we're looking at winding up season 1 of Talking
Season
Over.
1, we're not going away. We have season 2 already planned out, and so it's going to be.
So we're hoping to, going forward, we might be looking at going to a few of the historic parks and gardens around the country, around Dublin, Kildare, Meath.
Probably going to be like a little mini. The
Mini
first couple
series.
of episodes will be a mini series on historic properties and park design and maintenance kind of thing. So that's, make sure you're going to
Tune into
come
that.
back for that and listen into go back to series 1, episode 1, and
Go and listen,
maybe
share.
have another listen.
And over the winter months now, while it starts to get dark and stuff like that, we're going to be inviting a few guest speakers, and we'll be interviewing them over the next couple of months as kind of one-off episodes. So if you're in the industry and you want to chat to us about something, just send us a message, and sure, we'll have a chat and talk about the troubles and issues that you're facing and whatever
Stripes of life.
whatever your challenges are. So so that about sums it up, guys.
Yeah.
We'll chat to you in a couple of
Thanks
weeks.
for tuning
And
in.
thanks for tuning in, and make sure you share and tell people about Talking Horticulture, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.